Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Gaur Hari Bo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Gopinatha ki jai, Grantaraja Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaura Premanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Today we're reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, and today is Wednesday, all day long, and it's Pratipat, first day of the month after Kartik. I don't know what it's called. The month after Kartik. Huh? That's a particular day, Katyayani Puja. Margasirsha. Oh, right. Okay, so we're coming into the winter time. Have you noticed? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswating Vyasa Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. We're reading from the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, chapter 1. The Advent of Lord Krishna introduction. We're continuing to hear the account of how Kaṁsa is how Kaṁsa is dealing with his fear. Yeah. And how Nārada is stirring up his fear. And today we're getting a little explanation, a little background story to Kaṁsa. Who is Kaṁsa? ātmānam iha sañjātaṁ. ātmānam iha sañjātaṁ. jānan prāg viṣṇunā hatam. jānan prāg viṣṇunā hatam. mahā-asuram kālanemim. mahā-asuram kālanemim. yadubhiḥ vyarudhyata. yadubhiḥ vyarudhyata. ātmānam iha sañjātaṁ. jānan prāg viṣṇunā hatam. mahā-asuram kālanemiṁ yadubhiḥ vyarudhyata. Chant, chant, chant.
jānan prāg viṣṇunā hatam mahā-asuram kālanemim yadubhiḥ vyarudhyata.
What does it all mean? Huh? Yes, not just a demon, but a big demon. ātmānam. Personally. Iha. In this world. Sañjātaṁ. Born again. Born again demons. Jānan. Understanding well. Prāk. Previously. Before this birth. Viṣṇunā. By Lord Viṣṇu. Hatam. Was killed. mahā-asuram. A great demon. Kālanemim. By the name Kālanemi. Yadubhiḥ. With the members of the Yadu dynasty. Saha. He, Kaṁsa. Vyarudhyata. Acted inimically. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: in his previous birth, Kaṁsa had been a great demon named Kālanemi and been killed by Viṣṇu. Upon learning this information from Nārada, Kaṁsa became envious of everyone connected with the Yadu dynasty. Purport: persons who are demons, enemies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are called asura, asuras. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the asuras, because of their enmity toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead, take birth after birth in asura families, and therefore glide down to the darkest, hellish regions. And so ends Prabhupada's purport. In his previous birth, Kaṁsa had been a great demon named Kālanemi and had been killed by Viṣṇu. Upon learning this information from Nārada, Kaṁsa became envious of everyone connected with the Yadu dynasty. We're seeing an acceleration of intensity, of conflict. And this intensification of the conflict between the demons and the demigods, the devas and the asuras, is elsewhere in the Bhagavatam, the analogy is given of bamboo. When bamboo is rubbing against bamboo, it can spark a fire. And so the analogy is used to suggest how the Lord can appear out of conflict. We hear a lot about wildfires nowadays. It seems they're happening more and more and more with what is identified as global warming. So the world is heating up and burning down. Seems to be what we're doing. Human population is becoming very expert at doing this. Well, we may say the fundamental heat of conflict is what is behind this. In this verse, we are hearing about a big demon, mahā-asura. The word asura is used already in the Rig Veda several times, not necessarily for demon. The English word demon comes from Greek, daimon, and a daimon can be any divinity who is engaged in this world. That's a daimon. In any case, asura. There was a theory, which it's kind of neither been established nor refuted, that the word is related to or comes from the Persian ahura. It's interesting, for what it's worth, that in the ancient Persian tradition, Ahura Mazda is the supreme being, and Ahura were the good guys, and the Daeva were the bad guys. Yeah. Go figure. Well, scholars are debating, or they used to debate, is there a connection here or not? It hasn't been firmly established, but it's kind of interesting. So we're getting a bit of history here, we may say, background history to why is this demon a big demon? What's his problem? And there is a problem. It goes back before this life, and it goes back to someone named Kālanemi. I didn't have time to really get to the bottom of the story of Kālanemi. It seems there are different stories. The name Kālanemi, Kala means time, Nemi means a portion, so like in a chariot wheel with all its spokes, so one portion of two spokes, between two spokes, that's a nemi. And so Kālanemi suggests the passage of time. And Kālanemi has something to do with this. And he appears in some versions. I don't know that he appears in the Valmiki Ramayana, but he appears in some versions of Ramayana. Ramayana has so many versions, as a relative of Ravana, whom Ravana sends to try to stop Hanuman from going to collect the herbs to save Lakshman. And for this purpose, there's something about a crocodile. And in any case, so the story seems to go that his purpose is foiled. Hanuman kills the crocodile and also kills Kālanemi. Jai! And so he is able to go off to the mountain in the Himalayas to get the herb. And of course we know he doesn't know which herb to get, and so what does he do? Picks up the whole mountain. Yeah, that's logical. The logical thing to do. Yes, well, that would go off on another subject, but here we have a sort of background story to why someone is causing trouble in this life, and we see this again and again in the Puranic literature. There's a story when you see something going on. Why is it happening? It's happening because of something else that happened at another time. There's always some background to it. And this general point, I think, helps us to understand when we experience different situations in this life. There's something behind it. We may not know what it is. It's interesting. I've been thinking about the story of Hiranyakashipu, well, Jaya and Vijaya, and then of course they become Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, and then they become, who do they become? Huh? They become Ravana and Kumbhakarna, pot ears, and then they become Shishupala and Dantavakra. Now, here's a question that one might ask, and indeed it has been asked, it turns out. It was kind of amazing, but it popped up on my computer screen yesterday evening that this question was raised. The question is, why is it if Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha were killed by the Lord, why were they not immediately liberated back home, back to Godhead? Now you may say, well, they were cursed to have 3 lifetimes. Yes, but that's not the only reason. And this is discussed in the very Vishnu Purana. This question comes up in the Vishnu Purana, and there it's discussed. Parashara Muni, I believe, explains Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, as they were fighting with the Lord, they could not understand that he was the Lord. It didn't register who they were dealing with. They were all the time just thinking, this is, a half man, a half lion, something very strange. But they were, or Varaha, very strange. But they were not understanding that this is the Lord. And similarly, Ravana, when he's meeting with Rama, he doesn't understand that this is the Lord. He thinks this is a human being. And so it's not enough. There are other reasons given, but it's not enough. Finally, the other reason, explained, and I believe Jiva Goswami also makes this point. There are three principal forms of the Lord, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's Nrsingadev, there's Rama, and there's Krishna. And they are listed in this order. Well, I don't know if it's Rama, Nrsinga, but in any case, it's Krishna is the last. And Krishna at the last is significant. Krishna, ete changsa kalapungsa, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. He is the original Supreme Lord. And therefore, it is Krishna who liberates. It is finally, when Shishupal, first of all, Shishupal had been making so many insults. And as he was insulting the Lord, he was naming the Lord. He was speaking the Lord's names. And all of this was bringing him, excuse me, to connect with the Lord, as we know also Ajamila does. And so, when the time comes, he makes that number 100 insult, such that Krishna, having been counting with his little counter, 1, 2, 3, finally comes to 98, 99. Go ahead, Shishupal, make one more insult. We're waiting. That's right. Last insult. Very good. Now I have kept my promise to your mother not to kill you, so long as you make 100 insults. And so the last one is done, and then he kills him. And then what happens? Everyone witnesses something very amazing. They see the spark, which is Shishupal, enter into the body of Krishna. And Yudhishthira is shocked. He says, how is this possible? And his shock and amazement leads him then to ask the question, which leads to Narada's giving the response, which constitutes the entire 7th canto of the Bhagavatam. So this asura bhava persists. It can persist for a long time. So much so that Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16. Remember chapter 16? It's my favorite chapter. Yeah, because it describes myself. No, the demonic nature. Yes, Krishna. What is it? Toward the end, Krishna is expressing what seems like a sense of a mood of anger. This Bhagavad Gita looks like it's hasn't seen better days. It's falling apart. Yeah. Tanaham vishata kruran sangsareshu naradama. Kshipam yajasram ashubhan asrish eva yonishu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Notice, he doesn't say, I cast them eternally into hell, which has been an idea promoted within some Abrahamic traditions. We won't mention names. And has been a cause of consternation amongst their followers. I came upon the interesting person, 19th century British author George MacDonald. Anyone heard of George MacDonald? probably not. He was a novelist. He wrote fantasy novels, especially, and including for children, especially for children. He became very popular. He was a Christian minister, and he was very much concerned about this idea that someone could be condemned to hell for eternal punishment. And he had a very interesting argument of why this doesn't make sense. Several arguments, but one point he made was that in what way would this change a person who has sinned has now to burn eternally in hell? How is that going to correct his sin? And furthermore, how is that bringing any glory to the Lord? And if it's not bringing glory to the Lord, if it's not showing that the Lord is glorious, then what would be the point? Why would the Lord do such a thing? So he was very concerned with this. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, he wrote fantasy novels essentially to explore spirituality, and I find it interesting that he was the inspiration for many later fantasy writers, including C.S. Lewis. You've heard of C.S. Lewis? You read his books, yeah. So he wrote several books, including some fantasy stories for children, all of which have, some sort of journey, some seeking, some coming to higher wisdom. Well, aside from that little diversion into relatively recent history, what I found interesting this morning, reading this section of Bhagavad Gita. So the point was that Krishna is not saying this person's going to burn eternally in hell. He says repeatedly, life after life, someone may go into asura bodies. In fact, he says in the next verse, asuring yonim ātmānam. One goes literally into demon wombs. Muda janmani again and again, life after life. Mama prapyaiva kaunteya. I become aprapya. I become not available. I become inaccessible, Krishna says, to such a person. But now, here's the point. Here's where Krishna comes to the tasmat, therefore. Whenever Krishna says tasmat, he's been building up something, and then he says tasmat, therefore. I have a conclusion, and what is that? Trividham narakasyedam dvaram nashanam ātmānam. And what are these trividham dvaram nashanam? What are they? Yes. Kama krodha tata lobhas tata tasmat etatrayam tyajet. One should therefore give up. And it's funny. Prabhupada's translation, he says, every sane man should give these up. Well, it doesn't say every sane man in the Sanskrit, but Prabhupada says, it's only sane. It's only reasonable. Tasmat etatrayam tyajet. This is this optative form, which means you should do it. If you want the result, which is to become free from repeated birth and death, this is what you should do. Give up kama, krodha, and lobha. Well, our I almost said friend, Kaṁsa, is not ready to do that. He is a mahā-asura. And speaking of mahā-asuras, then, we have another term which begins with maha, and that is mahā-jana. Mahā-jana, great person. And I was recalling that Srila Prabhupada discusses at quite some length about mahā-janas in Chaitanya Charitamrita. In the 17th chapter, Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is glorifying Madhavendra Puri. He says, Dharma stapana hetu sadur vyavahar Puri gosayir je acharan se dharma sar. A devotee's behavior establishes the true purpose of religious principles. The behavior of Madhavendra Puri Goswami is the essence of such religious principles. There's a very long purport. I won't read the whole thing, but Prabhupada is saying there are all sorts of mahajans for all sorts of people, including for the demons. Well, he says for the yogis, for example, who want to control the senses, Patanjali Rishi is a mahajan. For the jnanis, the atheist Kapila, Vasishta, Durvasa, Dattatreya, and other impersonalists are mahajans. For the demons, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana's son Meghanada, Jarasandha, and others are accepted as mahajanas. For materialistic anthropologists speculating on the evolution of the body, a person like Darwin is a mahajan. The scientists who are bewildered by Krishna's external energy have no relationship with the Supreme Personality of God, and yet they are accepted by some as mahajanas. Similarly, philosophers, historians, literary men, public speakers, and social and political leaders are sometimes accepted as mahajans. There's another term I've just come across in the publicity world, influencers. Right? This is used now in the social media. I've been looking a little, exploring about the uses of social media as I explore ideas of promoting the book which I've just written and published, which, I'm hoping hard copy will arrive in the next few days so I can show you. And it's interesting, there's something which is, someone has called the, what is it now? I've forgotten the word now. The, No, influencer, but what is casino? That's it. The casino effect. Have you heard of the casino effect? So these media like Instagram, for example, it's a company. It's actually part of a bigger company. And companies are in the business of making money. And how they make money is by getting you to use them. And the more you look at them, the more you use them, the more advertisements will be seen by you. And the more advertisements are seen by you, the more money Instagram gets. And so they do different things. They have what are called algorithms, which help to make it more likely that you will spend more time looking. And why are you looking? One of the big reasons you are looking is because you get a little charge in your brain of dopamine. Dopamine makes you happy. Yoo-hoo! I got a like. I got another like. I got so many likes. Happy, happy. But the way they make this is, it's the casino effect. I never had this experience myself, but I've seen years ago when I was going on a ferry from Sweden to Finland. It was an overnight ferry, and as we, the passengers, were let onto the ferry, I saw people running into the ferry. Where were they running? They were running to the slot machines on this ship to immediately start using it. And the slot machine is designed in such a way that you will sometimes win, but then you will sometimes lose. But then that thrill you got from winning makes you want to try again. And the dopamine actually apparently works both ways. There's a thrill in losing also. Yeah. Huh? Welcome to the age of Kali. Welcome to the material world. So, so the casino effect then in the social media is getting you to spend more time with that social media so that you bring more money to that company. It's all about money. And so, indeed, mudho janmani janmani, lifetime after lifetime, we can spend our lives absorbed in these things. Speaking of long periods of time, also, Kaṁsa reminded me of Ashvatthama. We all know about Ashvatthama, how at the end of the battle of Kurukshetra, after it was thought that it's all over, what does he do? He enters into the camp of the Pandavas and he murders the sons of Draupadi and the Pandavas. He gets this idea while sitting under an ashvata tree in which there are many blackbirds or crows sitting in the branches of the tree. When an owl, this is at nighttime, it's at dusk, and he's sitting with his friends and they're discussing what to do, and then this owl comes in to the tree and starts eating up the crows. And that gives him the idea. And he worships Lord Shiva. And it's understood that Lord Shiva enters into him. And so, as a kind of embodiment of Lord Shiva, he goes and does this terrible crime. And then after this, he is caught. And we all know it's described in 7th chapter of 1st canto Bhagavatam. Krishna and Draupadi are speaking to Arjuna and saying two opposite things to Arjuna about what he should do to punish Ashvatthama. And Krishna is saying you should kill him, and Draupadi is saying don't kill him. And we know Arjuna decides the solution is, because he has to please both, to remove this jewel from Ashvatthama's head. And we read this and we think, that doesn't sound like much of a punishment to me. But it says from removing the jewel from his hair, apparently that's what it says in the Bhagavatam. In the Mahabharata, he is born with this jewel in his forehead. And so this points to his being also identified with the snakes. In any case, Arjuna apparently in the Mahabharata, in the more complete version, he carves out this jewel. And then, a little more horror for this morning, and then it's not Arjuna, but it's Krishna who then curses Ashvatthama to wander for 3,000 years alone without any identity, because the jewel has been his identity. Now he has lost it. Now in effect, he is no one. And it's said he wanders, and he's still wandering today. And there are occasionally on social media, people report that they have seen Ashvatthama. So he's kind of a Bigfoot character. You've heard of Bigfoot. Yeah, so now the winter is coming on, the dark time is coming. Who knows? Maybe Ashvatthama is lurking about Radhadesh. Hare Krishna. And on that happy, irrelevant note, I think I'll stop here before something worse comes out of my mouth. Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Any thoughts, further points, questions about any of these? Yes.
How is it that he was cursed 5,000 years ago and with 3,000 years and he's still wandering?
Yeah, indeed. How is that? It's also said that he wanders until the end of the age of Kali. And then there's different versions about how long the age of Kali goes. So some of them, it's another 3,000 years, from that time. Yes, Jai. Yes. Yes. He becomes Vyasa. Yeah, he's associated with Vyasa. It's interesting too. He's a very mysterious character. Yeah. Yes.
I recently read in Chaitanya-charitamrita there are two types of personal liberation. One is to merge with the Brahman approaches, but the other is to merge with the body of the Lord, like Shishupal. Can you explain what is the difference?
The difference? Well, you'd probably have to ask one of those who have actually had that experience. What is the difference? What's the difference between merging into Brahman as one form of liberation and merging into the body of the Lord? We understand, sometimes it's said that Brahman effulgence is the effulgence of the Lord's body. And then, what is the Lord's body? Well, it's Satchit Ananda Vigraha, isn't it? And so what would that form, what would that experience of merging with that body be? You would think it would be an experience of not just Sat, but also Chit and Ananda. But specific distinctions made between the two. Of course, we also know the term Sayujya Mukti, where yuj, it's that verbal root that we get from yoga. Yoga, the verbal root, the dhatu is yuj, which means to join. And so Sayujya Mukti is a liberation of joining the Lord. Now, what is this joining? In English, there's the word union, but there's another word, and that is communion. We hear in the Christian tradition, they use a lot the notion communion, which is a sense, it's not the sort of, it's not union in the sense of losing one's identity. It's more like what we understand as perfectly entering into the spiritual world, as we say. So we may say that the because in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya tradition, they don't condemn Sayujya Mukti. We Gaudiya Vaishnavas condemn. We say, thank you, no thank you. We don't want it. Why do we not want it? Because it sounds too much like losing our identity. In the Sri Vaishnava tradition, apparently their understanding is it's not losing identity, because that wouldn't be Sri Vaishnava philosophy. It would be more like communion. I don't know that any more detail is given to make the distinctions. When we hear of merging with Brahman or Brahmajyoti, the emphasis is there that you're in a position which is very uncertain or very impermanent. You're there and you will fall from it. Aruhya kritshena param padam tata patantyadha anadriti yushmadangraya. You've made it finally to Brahmajyoti, and what are you going to do there? As Prabhupada would say, you send a spaceship up or an airplane, at some point it's got to come down. But liberation into the body of the Lord, well, we understand from the case of Shishupal, he enters into the body of the Lord, but then what happens with him? He returns, doesn't he? He goes back to where he started. He becomes again Jaya. So some sort of difference seems to be there. My understanding, yes.
Just on that point, in the Catholic tradition, when the host at a certain point in the Mass becomes the body of Christ,
that's called communion. Holy Communion. Yeah.
So I guess it's a merging of God.
Yeah, that's interesting. Holy Communion. Also, they don't. They speak of the bread and the wine. They say it's not a transformation; it's a transubstantiation. It's more fundamentally different. Yes. Thomas Aquinas. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes, Mataji.
So the Shishupal and Nandamaka, they took birth again as Jana and Mother.
Well, that's kind of like, yeah, but that's sort of, what do you call it? In a drama, in a performance, there's the, not refrain, what is it, when they come back on stage at the end of the performance? Encore, yeah. Yeah, it's sort of, I see that as a kind of encore, because the the Chaitanya Charitamrita is like a commentary on the Bhagavatam. So Jai and Vijay agreed to come. Okay, we'll come again for some more pastime, because who can resist to have some pastime with some Leela with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? That's going to be worthwhile. So, yeah, that's a special kind of one more appearance. It's Bhakti Shastri plus. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't this wonderful? Yeah.
Personalist of my heart, they say, well, you lose your identity. And when I hear that, I'm saying it's the same as dying for an atheist, because you're not there anymore. So
Mm.
you experience that if you're not there. So for me, it doesn't make any sense, that kind of impersonal liberation.
Yeah. Well, the explanation from a pure standard Vedantic, Advaita Vedantic point of view, that's not a problem, because you are that Brahman which is consciousness itself, which is conscious of itself, and which is therefore Sat-Chit, and indeed they will include Ananda, not just Sat. They will say these are the characteristics. So you don't have to worry about this, because you're going to be all of that. And you will say, but that doesn't make sense, and I will agree. It doesn't make sense. To which they may say, well, it's inconceivable. And we will say, we have another idea which is inconceivable, but a lot more conceivable. Achintya Veda Veda Vada. There is a simultaneous. We heard this yesterday. The Nimbarkas also speak of simultaneous, but they don't understand that it's inconceivable. Possibly because in early Veda Vedanta, they're actually speaking not of simultaneous difference and non-difference, but sequential difference and non-difference, where this world, when it's created, is the difference, and when it's resumed back into Maha-Viṣṇu, it's the non-difference. And then again, so that's a kind of cyclical Veda. Yeah, Hare Krishna. Right. Yes, Jai. No, go ahead.
I read it somewhere that what the effulgence of Krishna is made of is happy souls.
What Krishna's body is made of? Oh, its effulgence is made up of happy souls. Happy souls, Jai. Being a happy soul? Yeah.
So it's not that it's like miserable, but for a devotee it's considered, and devotees can't have this exchange.
Yeah. Yeah, that happiness is miserable.
They just keep coming out because he's unlimited, right? But he keeps making them come out, and they have to
Yeah. So Therefore, it said the Vaishnava does not accept these different forms of liberation because they deprive one of service. Much happier. Yes, Anupama.
I wonder, could we extract a very important lesson for us in this explanation to Vishnu Purana? These mahā-asuras who didn't merge because they didn't understand Krishna is God. It doesn't mean like if you just keep on going and doing all the non-devotional service without proper understanding, you won't make it to the heaven.
Yeah, we may not make it. So, Krishna says in the Gita, famously, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvata tyaktva punar janmanaiti mameti saha Arjuna. One who understands the Daiva character, this transcendental character of Krishna's Janma and karma, such a person, tyaktva deham punar janmana eti, one will not again come here if one understands this. Yeah.
Who understands?
Oh. Well, Krishna makes all the right arrangements. Yes. So the good news is, if we're determined to be a demon or a maha-demon, we may take birth again and again and again and again in this world, but it's not eternal. Huh? Yeah, the world's not eternal, that's a fact. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanande.